Cultural Lab, which is an interdisciplinary research hub with a focus on computer interaction and digital media. So my PhD is about artists working in labs and the idea of artistic prototype. But this presentation is kind of collateral to my main research topic, and I'm going to talk about two projects which are different, but they have in common certain aspects that made me conceptualize them as ways of prototyping heritage. So they're both ways of using digital technologies to facilitate the ways of engagement and in particular to facilitate further creative work with archive or collections. So first of all, maybe it's not obvious for everyone what the prototype is, or anyway the richness of meanings and theorizations around the concept of prototype. So I tried to make a very, very synthetic list of, to have a sort of background overview. So a prototype is mostly applied in design and manufacturing, but has meanings and also in different fields. Anyway, it's generally considered as an early version of a product or a stage in the design process, but also an archetype, so like the first or most typical example in a category. It's been conceptualized as a way of materializing and testing ideas or visions, sort of an externalization of an idea, so that it can be shared, become tangible, and therefore catalyze collaborative work around it. It's been described as a way of thinking and learning by doing, a tool for open and participatory innovation. It's been associated with the notion of boundary object, so an object whose meanings are slightly different for different individuals or different communities of practice, but they're still able to work with the same object, even though their idea of that object do not coincide. And prototyping has a special role in grassroots communities, where it's a sort of platform for co-creations and also a tool for empowerment, especially in art clubs and spaces. There is this idea that if you can manage technology, you can have you can be in a better position to deliberate and have your position and your saying on certain innovation, which are otherwise top down. And it's often also used as an object for critique or persuasion or debate. So a prototype could just be not intended as going into production, but as a critical object, like in speculative or critical design, trying to question assumptions or demonstrate possible consequences of certain innovation patterns. And in art history, in the past, it's been artists working with prototypes have been, in general, part of movements or tendencies, viewing art as a social project, like Bauhaus or Butemas, for example. So, increasingly, for the sake of engagement and access, collection and archives are being digitized and turned into materials for their creative appropriation. So there are a number of fields where prototyping and heritage are colliding together, and these are digital humanities, data visualization, research for design, curation, just to name a few. And this prototyping culture is usually inspired by values of openness to transformation, and co-creation. So these two projects are two different ways to explore how the application of these values to heritage can, what kind of consequence can have. Sorry. So this is the first project I want to introduce. Both projects have been developed by my co-authors and colleagues in Culture Lab, by the way, I forgot to say that. So the poetics of the archive aims to generate a series of interfaces to explore the archive of the Blood Axe Books, which is a publisher of poetry. Newcastle University recently acquired the whole archive, comprising manuscripts of poems from the 70s onward. And the idea was to develop these interfaces in parallel with the process of digitization and archival, so to make this process live. And the first audience and target for this project is intended to be the users of the archive. So generally speaking, other poets that use the archive for scholarly work or for inspiration for producing new work. But obviously this can serve a more general public as well. So these interfaces are tools for exploring the archive, generally in serendipitous ways, so finding criteria which are different from the search by author or search by year and so on. And it's a collaboration between the Department of English and Culture Lab. Okay, so this is just an example of one of the multiple interfaces created, and this one the user could draw a shape with the mouse on that square, and by doing this you get all the poems that match with that shape. So it's an unusual way to find poems and to associate authors, places or subjects. Another tool, for example, is a sort of magnifier that allows you to explore the manuscript as it was physically there. So one of the directions of the projects was to focus on material aspects of the manuscripts, so that through digital tools you could actually have a sort of more material experience. The manuscripts are contained in about 200 boxes, and there is one particular interface which visualizes these boxes, and you can get a sense of the interconnection. So if you click on one box, you are connected to all the other boxes that contain the same author and other kind of associations. But there are also creations that are outside the web. So, for example, this is the marginalia machine. Marginalias are the handwritten comments that you find on the margins of manuscripts. And what this machine is doing is basically live drawing replicas of the marginalias from recently digitized items. So it's not really in real time because it was too difficult in terms of organizational issues, but yeah, there is still the idea of making this process live and experienceable from other people. And this is the second project. This was developed by John Bowers and Tim Shaw during a residency at the Pacific Company called Performing Collections, where they were invited to make something with geological objects from the Ipswich Museum. This took place in the early 2014. So here, again, the first target or the first public in mind is made by our creative practitioners, either musicians or technologists or visual artists, and the idea is to invite or just let people drop in sessions of public making where the materials from the museum are available together with technological devices like Arduinos and sensors and various other things, and see what happens and let people playing with these things. But we also had the general public coming to their sessions and just having a look without actively manipulating or engaging. The main aims are to incite curiosity, imaginative and playful interpretation, and creative application. And the main outcomes have been new sonic devices, not really instruments, but let's say assemblages of materials and tools that make sounds and displays, sort of exhibits. So there is a shift from framing these artifacts as coming from the past to focusing on their presence and their life and sensorial aspects in the present. In fact, two main strategies have been used in the project. One is to juxtapose materials and data, for example, putting together fossil samples with meteorological data, either live or historical, and to expand the sensorium. So processes of sonification, for example, they made close-up images of certain artifacts and they sonified them. Creation of all sorts of instruments, field recordings in the areas surrounding Ipswich where the artifacts are coming from. And also the creation of a sort of new exhibition arrangement towards the end of the residency. They created this environment in a darkened space with spotlights just on the objects and assemblages, and still working on it, but also really focusing on the senses and the manipulation, rather than on a more intellectual kind of fruition or the traditional approach to explain where the artifact is coming from, what it is, and so on. So why am I describing these practices as prototyping? First of all, they are unfreezing the collections. They are integrating these artifacts in a sort of flux, in a cycle of transformations. They're using them sometimes really as raw materials, or anyway, materials for prototyping, for making both their physical appearance and their meanings temporary and contingent and subject to modifications. Also, they both imply the creation of new machines, the marginalia machines, for instance, or the musical instruments, even though the latter are much more rough and unrefined. And finally, similarly to prototypes, they both generated material arrangements that support collaborative work. And again, to summarize briefly the values inspiring these practices, we have serendipity, exploration, playfulness, transformation, and materiality. These practices are significant to me because of the way they subvert established assumptions associated with handling and conservation of collection. So for example, if the tendency quite establishes that of a didactic approach to attribute an interpretation to an artifact and provide it to the public, even though this might be open and subjective. Here there is a stronger emphasis on generative issues. So these objects are primarily intended as a starting point for further creative work or research. Also, these objects are becoming relevant for qualities different from the ones that are the origin of their inclusion in the collection. So now we're not thinking about how ancient these artifacts are or the literary value of the poem, but we're focusing on sensorial aspects, creative potential, ways of associating this with something else. The use of technology in heritage work is also evolving because in the past it's been more generally used as an guide to interpretation, quite definitely separate from museum objects, while now it's more integrated in an arrangement where it's difficult to distinguish what's the artwork or the cultural object and what is just a supporting tool. And all this comes together with a sort of evolution of the notion of knowledge that is associated with heritage. There is a tendency to approach knowledge now in more provisional terms. Knowledge is not something static and once and for all attributed to a collection, but is something contingent and in action. And this is something that also relates to debates around practice-based research, for example. But this would be an entirely new presentation. So just to conclude, I want to mention a few problems related to these practices. First of all, they are cross-disciplinary endeavors, and so they come with tensions. So, for example, the Blue Ducks project presented difficulties at the level of collaboration and actually failed to establish effective collaboration between the designer, Dr. Schofield, the archivists, and the users of the archive, and resulted in individual work, basically. And these tensions can also come from the fact that in general curators or archivists and so on are not used to work together with makers or creative practitioner, but actually very strong potential to make this collaboration work in productive ways. Also, there are approaches that might be in conflict with preservation standards and norms, like obviously lots of objects are, they can be manipulated or touched, but also, there is a more established tendency, as I said, to maybe focus on approaches which are more deductive or intellectual anyway. And finally, these practices have a very hybrid status. It is not clear if we can address them as artworks or interfaces, tools, assemblages, displays. So this might create confusion and definitely needs some more discussion and vocabulary. Thank you.